Musin. I am back in action, ready to make another video. The most recent Regents test for Algebra 1 came out. I have been eagerly waiting for this so that I can start working on that. We've had a little bit of changes in the curriculum and things in certain districts in New York, going towards the IM curriculum. And as a result, last year they started slightly changing the Regents, not by a lot, and it's still very similar, but there have been some changes, so that's why I like to, make sure I have the most recent tests reviewed on my channel. So yeah, and as always, I like to start with part 4, which is the hardest question worth the most points. It's worth 6 points, and it often requires a deeper knowledge of whatever topic it covers. This topic is systems of equations. So it involves being able to make an equation, making 2 equations, system of equations, graph them, solve them. So yeah, I'm going to dive right into that, and then I'll work backwards and go through the other tests and make a series on that. So this is my first of the series. Make sure you subscribe if you want to get alerted to when I make a new video. And I have them nicely organized by the test that they come from. So let's get started. We have a word problem here. It says Anna plans to spend $30 on balloons and party hats for her daughter's birthday party. Including tax, balloons cost $2 each and party hats cost $1.50 each. The number of party hats Anna needs is twice as many as the number of balloons. So I always like to make my equations in a little unorthodox way, I guess you would say. It depends on how the word problem is presented, but they give you the total first. So I put the total there. I'm going to make the rest of my equation on the other side of this equal sign. I want my lines to be straight. So what is the other part of this equation? The total is talking about price. So the total amount of money that she's going to spend is $30 exactly. It doesn't say at least, at most, so it's exactly $30. So that means that we're going to be putting the price of everything in that equation. Here, in the next section, it tells us that x equals the number of balloons and y equals the number of party hats. So I'm going to put the price of the party hats, which is $150, times the number of the party hats. And then I need to add the price of the balloons multiplied by the number of the balloons. So x is the number of the balloons, y is the number of the party hats. So in order to find how much in total, you have to multiply the price by the number of party hats. For example, if you buy a certain amount of t-shirts and they cost $5, let's say you buy 5 t-shirts, you do obviously 5 times 5, which is 25. So the total price you spent is $25. This is obviously a little more complicated because it's systems of equations, but it's the same concept. Price times quantity. So this is going to be a systems of equations because the next sentence here mentions that the number of party hats that Anna needs, which is going to be y, equals twice the number of balloons. So I've been doing this a long time. That's why it's so easy for me. Some of you it might be easy for. Some of you might have no idea where I got these equations from. But remember that the number of party hats, that's why I like to color code everything, which is y, is twice as many as the number number of balloons, which is x. How do you represent twice of something? You multiply it by 2. So the number of party hats equals 2 times the amount of balloons. So normally, and this is a test taking strategy, I always try to build those in. If I saw this and I knew I had to solve it without reading further, which is sometimes what I do, not recommended, but I'm sure some of you guys do, I would automatically start solving with substitution because I could see I could easily substitute what y equals here, and I'd be able to start solving. But I don't want to waste energy or brain power. So I know that in the next section, next part of the question, I'm going to have to graph them. So in order to avoid wasting energy and brain power, I'm going to make it so I can graph them. And then I'm going to solve them by graphing. I don't need to do any extra work. So this equation is perfectly fine for graphing because hopefully you remember y equals mx plus b, where m is always the slope and b is always the y-intercept. So for the second equation, there's nothing where the y-intercept would be. So that means the y-intercept is 0 for the second equation. I was right. Then the first equation is not in that form yet. Y equals mx plus b. So we have to get it in that form in order to be able to graph it. So I want to move this entire term over to the other side of the equal sign. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to subtract. And a lot of my students get confused with this because normally when a number is attached to a variable, we usually divide it to separate them. Because they're attached by multiplication, the opposite is division. But at this time, we want to move the entire term, the whole thing, 2 and the x over. So we're going to subtract 2x on both sides. We're going to bring down the 1.5y. That gives us 1.5y equals negative 2x plus 30. And the reason I wrote it that way instead of 30 minus 2x is because I want it to look like this. So we're not done yet, we're close. But now is when we want the y on the left side of the equal sign by itself, not with any negatives, not with any numbers at all, just completely by itself y. So now we are separating the number from the variable by doing division. Now we're left with y equals negative 2 over 1.5x plus, I'm going to use my calculator here, 30 divided by 1.5 is 20. So now that is my equation. There is something I don't like about it. This decimal in a denominator is never something I want. But for this point, if you only did this, you would get 2 points by writing the equations, the system of equations. You would preferably box your answer here, or you could even box this one because that equation is perfectly fine. So even if you didn't know you were supposed to get it in slope-intercept form and you left them like that, you would still get 2 points because you wrote the equation correctly. Now we're putting it in this form because we want to graph it, and we know that. So on the side over here, I'm going to change this fraction into something we could actually use for slope. We could use this, but with the half, the 1.5, it makes it difficult. So we have to, this is why I always push fractions, and I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, but once you really learn about fractions, it's easy and your brain can like move between fractions easily. So I have to look at this fraction and say, what can I do to make this a whole number over a whole number so that I don't have any decimals or an integer, whatever. So I'm looking at it and I happen to know off the top of my head that 1.5 times 2 is 3. And then 2 times 2 is obviously 4. So that, if I multiplied both by 2, I would end up with -4/3, which is much better for graphing. And I would make many less mistakes, even by like trying to figure out where the half is, saving myself time just by doing that little step. So y equals -4/3x plus 20. So next part, in order to get the rest of my credit, I'm just going to rewrite the equations here. So like I said before, I didn't elaborate on it. There's no y-intercept there. So that means we're starting at 0 with that equation. Let me just move these down because I want to zoom in. So I'm starting at 0 and my slope is 2. When we need a whole number to be a fraction just for the sake of slope, we put it over 1. So now we have rise over run. So we're going to go up 2 over 1 from 0. Try to do that in yellow. Just so we know that it's the slope, 1, 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. And I'm going to go, this graph is not too big, so it's not going to cause me too much effort to make the line go all the way through. And that's my first line. You should label your lines all the time. And you actually will lose points if you don't label at least one of your lines. So make sure you label, I say both, but at least one, so you don't lose any points. My next line, the y-intercept is 20. So it crosses the y-axis at 20. And my slope is -4/3. That means that I'm going down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 3, 1, 2, 3. Down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 3. This is where they cross. That's going to be my solution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And yes, I have plenty of room here, so I am going to continue my points and make sure that I'm going. Label that. Like I said, as long as you have one labeled, then you're fine. But I always like my students to label both. So it says state the coordinates of the point of intersection of your lines. That is the solution that we have here. So the coordinates go, remember, x goes first, y goes second. So the value of x there is 6. And you just have to make sure there's 4 lines in between the 5 and the 10. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 6. And the y value is 12. And they're both positive because we're only caring about the positive quadrant because we're not talking about negative money or negative, well, we're not talking about money, negative amounts of products because that's not real. So we don't need to worry about negatives here. Now it says, explain what each coordinate means in the context of the problem. So there's only one solution because it's a system of equations. So in a system of inequalities, you would have a solution set where there's many solutions. This case, there's only one. And what does the coordinates mean? It means that when, well, I shouldn't say you, she buys 6 balloons, she will have but 12 party hats. And that might seem silly, and that's the part that everyone struggles with, is explaining, because it does seem a little silly, like, obviously we know that. But it's important to show that you really fully conceptualize what's going on in the context of the problem. And I do have to say, those are always my favorite questions as a teacher, because it really makes you think. Because why are we learning this? Everybody's always like, oh, why are we learning this? Because we want you to be able to, it's like basically in the context of life, context of the problem, like what's really going on here. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty simple and fast. It's a 6-point question. So if you did all of these parts and all of these questions correctly, you would end up getting 6 points, which is a big chunk. And like I said, I always like to go over the hard questions first, because if you could do this, then there's definitely at least 5 or 6 multiple choice questions that you could do just because you know how to do this. And that's another 5 points. So I'm always big on like doing these as many times as possible. And hopefully you found it helpful. If you needed any clarification on anything, please write a comment and I'll be happy to check them out and try to make a video on a specific piece of this or a similar question. But yeah, just subscribe, and hopefully, you'll get some alerts when I get to do the rest of the questions. All right. Thanks, guys.